Imagine walking down a busy medieval street, looking for a quick shave. You spot the iconic red, white, and blue-striped pole spinning outside. Today, it just means a fresh haircut. But in the Middle Ages, that pole was a chilling advertisement for blood, bandages, and sliced veins. Welcome to the horrifying world of medieval surgery, where the guy trimming your beard is the exact same guy sawing off the next customer's infected leg. Life in the Middle Ages was brutal. If you had a terrible toothache, a broken bone, or a nasty skin ulcer, you were in deep trouble. You didn't go to a doctor. Academic physicians considered themselves far too elite and pure to ever touch anything as filthy as human blood or pus. These fancy university-trained doctors preferred to diagnose illnesses by staring intensely at a flask of your urine and carefully consulting their astrological star charts. So, the dirty work fell onto the shoulders of the local barber. Since they already owned sharp razors and steady hands, they just expanded their business. They became known as barber surgeons, the ultimate medieval multitaskers. Their terrifying toolkit included rusty saws, giant tooth extractors, and bloodletting knives, all neatly laid out. If you needed surgery, there was no sterile operating room waiting for you. You were simply strapped down to a heavy wooden table covered in mystery stains. And here is the absolute worst part: modern anesthesia was completely non-existent. You had to remain wide awake while the barber surgeon went to work on you. Pain management consisted of taking a massive gulp of strong liquor, biting down hard on a leather strap, or simply getting knocked unconscious with a wooden mallet, because the pain was unimaginably intense. A good surgeon wasn't necessarily the most precise or delicate one. The absolute best surgeon was simply the fastest one. A top-tier medieval barber surgeon could completely amputate a shattered leg in under 2 minutes, furiously sawing through bone before the unlucky patient died from shock. But surviving the brutal operation itself was only half the battle. Remember those sharp surgical saws and knives? They were practically never washed between different patients. In fact, many surgeons proudly wore aprons crusted with old dried blood as a badge of honor, proving to everyone exactly how experienced they really were. Because germ theory was still centuries away from being discovered, medieval surgeons had no idea that microscopic bacteria existed or caused deadly infections. Instead, medical belief centered around the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you got sick, your fluids were out of balance. And the most popular way to balance your humors, bloodletting barber surgeons would happily drain your blood for almost any condition, from headaches to fever. For a gentler touch, they used blood-sucking leeches. Dozens of squirming leeches would be placed directly onto your skin to suck out the bad blood. If leeches were too slow, the barber surgeon sliced open a vein in your arm with a sharp blade, letting blood pour into a bowl. They often drained so much blood that the patient passed out cold. Ironically, fainting was considered proof that the treatment was actually working. If bloodletting didn't fix your severe headaches or strange behavior, the surgeon might decide you needed trepanation, drilling a hole directly into your skull. The theory was that drilling into your head released trapped evil spirits or relieved internal pressure, all while you felt every single painful twist. Now imagine surviving an amputation. The surgeons still had to stop you from bleeding to death. Their favorite method was cauterization using red-hot irons. They pressed burning metal directly against the open wound to sear the blood vessels shut, instantly burning flesh and producing thick clouds of smoke. If hot iron rods weren't available, surgeons poured boiling oil directly into open battlefield wounds, believing it burned out lethal poisons and deadly infections. The agonizing pain of cauterization caused many patients to die from sheer traumatic shock right there on the surgeon's filthy wooden table. To dress open wounds, medieval practitioners applied bizarre concoctions made of animal dung, tree sap, lard, and honey, introducing millions of dangerous bacteria. Even worse, surgeons believed in a concept called laudable pus. They actually thought that a wound leaking thick yellow pus was healing perfectly. Because they believed pus was good, surgeons purposely kept wounds dirty and open, unknowingly condemning countless helpless patients to painful deaths from blood poisoning. If you think general surgery was bad, wait until you hear about medieval dentistry. Tooth decay was common, but toothbrushes were absolutely not. Barber surgeons extracted rotten teeth using a terrifying metal tool called a dental pelican, which often shattered the surrounding healthy teeth in the bloody process. Without any numbing agents, the surgeon simply clamped the cold metal onto your tooth and violently ripped it right out of your bleeding jaw. But perhaps the most stomach-churning medieval procedure was cataract surgery. Yes, they actually performed delicate eye surgery in the dirtiest conditions imaginable. A practitioner would use a thick, completely unsterilized metal needle to violently push the cloudy eye lens straight into the back of your eyeball. This primitive technique was called couching. While it sometimes allowed patients to see blurry shapes, it almost always ended in total, permanent, agonizing blindness. Meanwhile, battlefield surgery presented its own gruesome challenges. When a medieval knight got shot, extracting a deeply buried barbed arrow was a bloody nightmare. To solve this problem, a special tool called an arrow spoon was invented. It was cleverly designed to slide into the wound and cover the sharp barbs. The surgeon would jam this metal spoon deep into your torn muscle, wrap it tightly around the deadly arrowhead, and forcefully yank it straight out. Unsurprisingly, the absolute agonizing pain caused fully grown men to scream until their voices gave out entirely, assuming they didn't bleed to death right there. Now let's talk about your actual chances of survival. Even if you were somehow tough enough to survive the initial shock of the brutal operation, you were probably doomed. Post-operative infection rates were astronomically high. Just days after a seemingly successful amputation, a raging fever would suddenly take over your severely weakened body. Deadly gangrene would quickly set in, turning the remaining flesh completely black and rotten, emitting a smell so utterly foul it could clear a crowded room. The elite academic physicians would just slowly shake their heads, check your yellow urine one last time, and confidently declare that your bodily humors were simply unfixable. And shortly after that, you would be swiftly carried out the back door of the barbershop and dumped directly into the overcrowded local graveyard. So why were these medical practices so incredibly backward and dangerous? The biggest problem was a total lack of actual human anatomical knowledge. For centuries, strict religious laws strictly forbade the dissection of human corpses. Doctors had to simply guess what the inside of a human body looked like. Most of their anatomical knowledge came from ancient texts or dissecting animals like pigs and apes, which obviously led to disastrous surgical mistakes on humans. Instead of studying actual human organs, surgeons relied heavily on astrology. They used a strange chart known as the Zodiac Man to plan their surgeries. The Zodiac Man linked every single body part to a specific astrological sign. Aries ruled the head, while Pisces supposedly controlled the human feet. If you needed surgery on your neck, but the moon was currently in the sign of Taurus, the surgeon would outright refuse to operate. They firmly believed that cutting a patient under the wrong astrological sign would guarantee a massive hemorrhage and a quick, painful death. Because local barber surgeons were often overwhelmed, medieval peasants also fell victim to traveling medical mountebanks, basically wandering quack doctors looking for quick cash. These traveling showmen would set up colorful wooden stages in busy town squares, promising miraculous instant cures for everything from cataracts to massive hernias. They hired loud musicians to play drums and trumpets during the public surgery. This wasn't for entertainment, but to drown out the patient's horrifying screams. One of their most famous scams was the Stone of Madness operation. They claimed they could cure mental illness by cutting stones out of heads. The quack surgeon would make a small cut on the scalp, palm a bloody pebble, and pretend to pull it right out of your brain. The gullible crowd would cheer in absolute amazement. The quack would collect his heavy bag of gold coins and quickly escape before the infection started. Meanwhile, the poor patient was left bleeding in the dirt, completely uncured, and now dealing with a highly infected open head wound. It took hundreds of years of countless unnecessary deaths before the medical community finally realized they needed to actually study the human body from inside. Even absolute royalty couldn't escape the horrors of early surgery. If a king developed a painful abscess, he suffered exactly like a common peasant. When King Louis XIV suffered from a severe anal fistula, his royal surgeon had to practice the dangerous operation on dozens of peasants first. The surgeon even invented a brand new, terrifyingly curved scalpel just for the king's royal backside. Surprisingly, the king actually survived the painful ordeal. But the real turning point in surgical history didn't happen in a royal palace. It happened by pure accident on a muddy, blood-soaked battlefield. In the 16th century, a French barber surgeon named Ambroise Paré was treating wounded soldiers when he completely ran out of boiling oil for cauterization. Panicking, he improvised a weird soothing mixture made of egg yolks, rose oil, and turpentine, and nervously applied it to the soldiers' open wounds. He went to sleep terrified, fully expecting those untreated soldiers to be dead by morning because they weren't purified by the red-hot boiling oil. But to his absolute shock, the next morning, the soldiers treated with the egg mixture were resting peacefully with surprisingly low pain and swelling. Meanwhile, the poor men who received the standard boiling oil treatment were screaming in sheer agony, their wounds severely inflamed and heavily infected. This accidental discovery was a massive historical plot twist. It proved that violently burning human flesh wasn't actually the best way to heal it. Paré also brought back the ancient technique of tying off blood vessels with silk threads instead of blindly searing them shut with hot irons. Slowly but surely, the bloody and chaotic craft of the barber surgeon began to evolve into a legitimate, highly respected, and scientifically based medical profession. In the 18th century, King George II of England finally officially separated the honorable surgeons from the regular haircutting barbers once and for all. The barbers got to keep the iconic red and white spinning pole, while the surgeons traded their rusty saws for clean, precise medical scalpels. But the nightmares weren't totally over just yet, because even with better tools, they still hadn't discovered the miracle of modern anesthesia or sterilization. It wasn't until the 19th century that humanity finally discovered chemical anesthesia, like ether and chloroform, putting an end to the agonizing screams of patients. Shortly after that, brilliant scientists finally proved the existence of microscopic germs, completely revolutionizing how surgeons viewed cleanliness and deadly post-operative infections forever. Operating rooms were aggressively scrubbed down with harsh carbolic acid, instantly killing the invisible bacteria that had quietly murdered millions of people for centuries. Surgeons finally started washing their filthy hands and boiling their surgical tools, leaving their proud, blood-crusted leather aprons in the garbage where they belonged. The terrifying medieval barber surgeon faded into dark history, eventually evolving into the highly trained, sterile, and painless medical professionals we completely take for granted today. So the next time you visit a modern hospital for a minor procedure, take a moment to deeply appreciate your comfortable bed and actual painkillers. And when you walk into your local barbershop for a quick trim, be incredibly thankful that they only carry small scissors instead of rusty bone saws. But as you sit in that comfortable chair, take one long look at the spinning red and white barber pole waiting right outside the shop window. Remember that the innocent red stripes secretly represent the flowing blood of millions of unlucky medieval peasants who had no other choice for medical care. It really makes you wonder if you were suddenly transported back to the Dark Ages with a terrible toothache. What would you actually do? Would you bravely sit in the barber's wooden chair, or just try to tough out the excruciating pain until your teeth naturally fell out? Let us know exactly what you would do in the comment section below, because we read every single one of your hilarious historical survival plans. If you enjoyed uncovering this horrifying slice of hidden history, please hit that like button to help our channel survive the brutal YouTube algorithm. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another deep dive into the weird, gross, and fascinating corners of our past. Until next time, keep your hands washed, stay away from rusty medical saws, and we will see you in the very next historical adventure.